All right, let's go ahead and get started. We'll start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, and I've asked Commissioner Wright to share a thought or legislative prayer, so I will turn the time over to her.
Thank you, Chair. We talk a lot about vision when we are here at Planning Commission, and I think vision is important for us to consider what's happening now, but also what's happening down the road, and to keep a vision. But I'm not going to focus on vision today. I want to just read two quotes that deal with vision, but really what we're doing with that. So the first is by Lee Bowman. Both of these men come from Harvard, professors and authors. And Lee says, "A vision without a strategy remains an illusion." A vision without a strategy remains an illusion. And then Michael Porter also follows that up by saying, "Strategy is about making choices, trade-offs. It's about deliberately choosing to be different." And I think we've talked at length specifically with some of the big issues that we have before our city right now. We've talked at length about what's the vision that we see? What's the vision that we are coming to for this area? And I think those are valuable discussions, especially with the city council. And as we come to an agreement and as we come to a shared vision, I would encourage us to move forward with a strategy that will make that vision happen. So it's not just an illusion. It's not just this, oh, it would be nice, or this is what I kind of see. It's like, well, okay, let's make that happen, and let's have a deliberate, choice, trade-offs that need to be made in order to make that vision happen. So that's my encouragement, and I'll just say a quick prayer. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for this opportunity to meet as a planning commission, and we pray for thy spirit to guide and direct our city and help us to be logical and fair. We're grateful for those who serve in our city and in our area, and we pray for their safety, especially those who are first responders and keep us safe day to day. We're grateful for the opportunity to live in this great country, and we pray that we will always be mindful of those around us and how our choices and our decisions impact others. And we thank thee for our blessings and say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you very much for that thought. Fortunately, we are going to be implementing some strategy, or at least moving the process of strategy forward tonight. So I think that's a good reminder. Let's go ahead and start with our first item on the agenda. We have Brighton Homes, who is asking us to amend the architectural design scheme that was approved for the Sheffield Downs development located at 350 East Pages Lane. And I'll turn the time over to staff.
Thank you, Chair Heyman. Members of the commission, as indicated, this is a request for Sheffield Downs to amend their development. Just for clarity and upfront, we received some calls. They are not changing the development layout or the type of uses, that being single family. They are limiting their request to amend into the design of the architecture of the single family homes. And so we've had some questions, are they changing the whole plan? So tonight, the process for changing the architecture was tied to the original conceptual plan that's tied to the rezone for the PDO. And so the process, according to the code, to amend that PDO commitment is the same process that you arrived to the decision to begin with. So that includes advertising for the rezone. And so this is a legislative matter, even though it's dealing down with the development of single-family homes. The change of an architecture is associated with a legislative decision, and so the body tonight will be making a recommendation to the City Council. You should have received the attachments, the staff report from the Planning Office. The architectural design character submittal is in your packet, and then their narrative arguing their cause for the change. From the staff perspective, you're balancing some policies and trying to weigh the matter of the change. The first thing to understand about specific to PDO is that plan development overlays are an opportunity to set aside a substantial code requirements to whatever base zone it's being requested in. It's not an obligation on the city's part, that's why it's a legislative decision, but there's options to vary the standards of the RM zone. So I've put into you, cut and pasted some of the policies so that you would understand the base zone. The base zone is residential medium. This is a multifamily type zone. It does allow single family as an option within that zone. But in predominant part, the expectation is that you would be dealing with buildings that have multiple dwelling units in them. And we have some design standards adopted by the city for multifamily development. And so I bring up that policy so that you have the expectations for multifamily development, and it spills over to single family development because single family is an option within that zone. The other aspect of that's outside of the base zoning is when they came through the PDO process, they limited it to the single family dwelling. They did commit to some design and architectural elements associated with that. But they also, in that PDO, did other things above and beyond the base zone. And that's part and parcel of why you use the plan development overlays. You're trying to do something better than the base zoning. And so I think that's the weighty matter about the architectural. The architectural design did originally reflect those standards associated with the RM zone. And so that's something to keep in mind. At the same time, they also provided the amenities, the design element, the fencing, because normally we would front units on Pages Lane, but having all the driveways on Pages Lane, which is a collector, wasn't as desirable. So there's a lot of design discussions on if they're backing onto the street, how do we improve that? They committed to the 10 feet of landscaping, nicer fence style, enhance the public space even though it's the rear yards of the lots. So they did do improved design that the RM would not have accomplished. And so in balancing that, it's a value judgment of whether you want to vary the architectural standards. They make their narrative argument. They're willing to stay committed to where the units face the public street and the design elements associated with that. They would also commit to the corner lot where it's visual and connected, that the architecture would be there. But they'd like to alter the materials on the other interior lots. Now, the alteration of materials is the RM zone does not allow the synthetic stucco or stucco in our residential medium zone. Their request is to be able to use the synthetic stucco as part of an offering. Some of it's cost, some of it is what I gather from their narrative, the ability to folks to be able to spend some of that money on the interior upgrades if they'd want to, so they want some more flexibility for the end user. But it doesn't eliminate that the end user is prohibited from using the materials. If they wanted to upgrade that, they could still upgrade to the other materials we list in the ordinance. So from our perspective, I can't say that it's a degradation because stucco is common with single-family homes. The style that we're proposing is common to a lot of single-family development. I do think that we need to keep in mind that the purpose of the design standards was associated with multifamily. And is also associated for the public street view too, for the unit. So you're balancing all of those policies. And so we've provided a recommendation for the commission simply to know those anchor policies, weigh those, listen to their argument on the narrative, keep in perspective of what they've done as well as the single family. And we provided you an option and findings to decide either way, because I do think this is one that you can make arguments on either side as a value for the commission. And then you weigh that, debate it, and give a recommendation to the city council, and they do the same. So our recommendation is you have two options to discuss.
Thank you very much, Corey. Any questions for staff? If not, we'll invite the applicant to step forward. If you'll introduce yourself, I know we know you, but for the record.
Do you know him?
I do, I actually do. Yes, I'm going to say Taylor Spendlove.
My name's Taylor Spendlove. When this issue came up at our office, I was very hesitant to bring this back to you guys, knowing all the work that we've put on it and done with it. What we ran into, and you've probably seen on the narrative, we explained this, but since we've gone through this process, we've seen construction costs go up, and right now we're selling these homes at a base level of right around $400,000 a home, which we believe we can sell fairly easily. The issue is the people that are looking at a lot this small, at a home this size, are kind of at the top of their budget already. And so it's not leaving a whole lot of room for them to upgrade the interior of their homes with nicer cabinets, nicer flooring, stuff like that. And so we're coming in asking for just to allow us basically anywhere that's not facing a street, a private street or a public street, to allow us to let them put stucco on those sides of the homes, so that they can either choose, if that's important to them, upgrade that, or use that money to put into the interior of their home. And so we just wanted to ask that request from you guys. I don't have anything else to really say other than that. We've already started sewer. Contrary to rumors, it is, and you guys know this, a single-family home project. And we have a lot of interest, but that's what we're coming to find, is a lot of the people interested in a lot like this are kind of just at the cusp of their price range.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the applicant?
So your letter of explanation hinted to the fact that you would then pass that savings directly on to them?
Yeah, so our base home price would drop to that much.
For all of the homes or just the interior lots?
Well, so what we do is we do lot premiums. So
Okay.
specific lots, you may have, all our home prices are the base home's the same, but each lot has a premium assigned to it. And so the homes that will have a full hardy wrap will have a higher lot premium to it. And so they can come in and say, this is the base home plan. If you just want the base home so you can upgrade the interior, you need to be on one of these lots. And that's kind of how it works. I think there was two parts to your question, or maybe I'm...
So...
Yeah, so we will pass it on, and it just varies on the home. So whatever home plan they have, depending on how much surface area there is, the price would change that.
So do you foresee those houses that are backing Pages Lane? I mean, if I were purchasing a home in this development, I probably wouldn't want to back Pages Lane, to be honest with you. And then I'm going to have a lot premium on the top of that. Mm-hmm. How do you foresee addressing that?
So those are things where we just kind of take a hit. We understand that, the best lots are the ones that are away from there. So we understand how that will function. And what we like to do is our base home plan is typically based off of what we think that home is worth on the majority of the lots, and that's what we'll stick with. And then we plan on doing a model on. I can't remember what we decided, but either one of the corner entrance lots, and that will be a very high-end home because it's our model. So we're already going to be upgrading pretty heavily for the model on pages. So, and we'll probably do a couple spec homes along there as well, just to kind of help. We've noticed as you build spec homes, when people can just kind of come in and buy it, the costs are a little bit lower, typically because they're not looking at the fancy lights in the design center. They're looking at the lights that are in the home, that kind of stuff. So.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. This matter has been scheduled for a public hearing, so we'll take the opportunity to open the public hearing and invite any member of the public who wishes to speak to step forward. Seeing no one step forward, we'll close the public hearing. Further discussion.
Have they told you, or have you done any kind of figuring of the percentage that would then, because I know it's a 20% requirement to have those architectural features. Have you figured how much it would be with the changes?
We have not. The PDO set that standard, and during the PDO, we accepted the design standard that was proposed and did not do the RM calculations against that.
So Corey, that 20%, that's in the RM zone.
Correct.
But you're saying the PDO supersedes that?
Right. So their conceptual proposal with this architecture was just weighted
Right.
at this value. And it didn't undergo a stringent analysis of
20%.
those percentages.
So Corey, in other RM zone developments that are similar to this, for example, Pioneer Gardens, is there stucco there?
I believe there is in the townhomes and the stack flats. I think the single family's mixed because it was taken over by Fieldstone, and did they include stucco
Yeah,
on their
there's
new
stuff
model?
on some of those, yeah.
They might have done that. Related to your question, but separate, this is the first project that was developed, even though it was a PDO, it's the first project where we had standards developed. So HFOCA from the past was not measured against this standard. Our other multifamily has not been measured against this standard. This would be the first project that you would measure that standard against as you make your value judgment.
The RM standard?
Yeah, those are fairly new.
You know, one thought I had is, as we address the needs of the city and looking a little bit towards affordable housing, I question the need for four-sided architecture, even on those along Pages Lane. I know the build area is a little small, and I don't know that you're going to have much visibility down those between the buildings. I'd be open to just, I know that in the staff report we kind of have three different categories of architectural features. We have the green, the yellow, and the blue. I'd be inclined to just go yellow along Pages, and then yellow on the two sides of that interior block, and then blue along the bottom. I don't know if that's from standing alone on that, but I just, that was a really interesting point, Becky, that you brought up, that these lots are going to already take a ding for being on Pages, and then going to kind of counteract that. Just thought ahead.
My response was, those are probably just the last ones that are going to sell.
Yeah.
So people are
yeah.
going to get the other ones, and then the market will drive, and it will say, well, those are the only ones that are left, and we'll pay the price
Yeah.
Yeah,
to get a home
that's what I
there.
kind of figured there too.
So I was a little less concerned by that. What you're thinking, Logan, is to make all these green dots yellow and
Yep.
put the stucco on the sides, like in between the houses, but have it the slatted on the front and the back.
That's right, and
Is
just,
that what you think?
yeah, just to be clear, the option of stucco on the inside.
Sure.
Obviously, if someone wants to go
True.
gangbusters, they can, but Thomas would, but for the rest of us.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing along those lines is we're already kind of giving a little bit on that design, and so how much do we care about that design standard or not care about the design standard? So how much do we give, right? And so do we give a little here, give a little there, pretty soon the design standard isn't a standard and it's just a whatever,
It's true, my cards have been revealed. That's right.
For what it's worth, my initial reaction was a little less sympathetic to the applicant. Sorry, Taylor. I just figure you guys take the risk in the PDO that construction costs will go up. That being said, I was persuaded by the letter that you submitted to the council. I mean, you did point out that you have not requested a bonus density, which you could have done. You have included additional upgrading in terms of landscaping, open space, streetscape, amenities, and I am very much persuaded by the affordable housing issue. I appreciate a builder that wants to pass that savings on to the home buyer. I mean, you could come here, and I suppose you still could. You could come request it of us and then pocket the difference if you wanted to. So I'm taking you at your word that you're going to pass it along to the home buyer. But this isn't going to address an affordable housing issue, but it will make houses slightly more affordable to the folks that you mentioned that are at the top end of their range. So I appreciated that you didn't come and ask for changes to everything, and that you were maintaining the design standards on all of the readily seen areas. So I'm in favor of what they're requesting, and I would recommend that the city council approve it.
Can I make maybe a counteroffer to Logan's proposal?
I'll allow it.
So one of the things that I do like about the green dots, right, is that at least on the sides of the homes, you still have some of those features around on the sides of the homes. I can buy into that idea that the backs of those lots 1 through 7 aren't necessarily going to be, there's not going to be a lot of visibility, especially given there's going to be a fence there. I don't know exactly what kind of fence is going to go in there yet. Okay, so it's not even going to be a gate that you'll be able to see through, really, right?
But they're tall. You're going to totally be able to see the back.
No, but you're not going to be the stone only comes up 3 feet on the bottom of the home, right? So you're not going to be able to see that. So here's my take on that, though. Meanwhile, lots 8, 14, 15, and 21, you do see the sides of those homes. And so what I would say is let's leave 1 and 7 as green dots, and I would say switch 2 through 6 to yellows, but then do 8, 14, 15, and 21 to greens, so that way you're picking up a couple greens, but you're giving away a bunch of yellows.
Those have a privacy fence, Trex fence on it as well on the sides for our design.
All right.
15, 14, and 21.
Yeah, and we did that specifically to kind of keep the same fencing, so it was uniform.
So that's going to come up on, all right, I see what you're saying.
Taylor, if you would say that at the mic so it's on YouTube, if people want to watch what you're stating.
Yeah, so those lots you're talking about are these ones right here?
Yep.
Yeah, so there's that same Trex fence that's along Pages.
Yeah.
Is gonna wrap the corner of lot 1, 7, and then come down those 4 lots. So we're
Similar view.
it's the similar view, yep.
Similar view.
Yeah, I think it's well put together. I agree with the coloring of the dots and why and the purpose behind it. And in someone who's looking to possibly buy a home, I can definitely appreciate the affordability of it. And $7,500 to $15,000 is big for me at least, and I think it would definitely help at least to give them the option to have that cost savings, and the letter tailored was really great. So I agree. I think it's I don't think it's going to compromise the architectural aspect of the whole project and make it look dumpy at all. I think it will still look really nice. So I think it looks good.
Okay, then I support it as proposed.
Any further discussion?
It's interesting that you discussed, Jalen, how you sort of swapped And I kind of went the opposite way, honestly. Because at first when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is great, pass the savings right along to the customer. And it's not that I don't trust you to do that, but I hesitate, unless it's a requirement, which I don't think we can do, to pass that along. I hesitate that being my main decision-making thing. And so then I went back to what is in the ordinance, and then I went that, and I said, oh, we're really not even anywhere close to 20%. I mean, that's why I was wondering. So then the exact percentages, but so then I kind of went back to like, okay, well, why do we have this ordinance in place, and why is it I mean, can we really, put all of this on the word of a developer, which has been a great developer. I don't mean that in anything, in negative light, but I hesitate hoping that that's going to be passed along to the customer without a guarantee.
To me, that was only one of the elements. I mean, I would be persuaded even without that. It was just sort of the cherry on top for me in terms of affordable housing. This developer has, I think, gone above and beyond in terms of other things that they didn't have to include in this division. And I think that by I wouldn't be in favor of changing dot colors. I think that the way that they've done it makes sense to me. So I'm okay with on the limited nature of the change that they're suggesting. Any other discussion? If not, the chair will entertain a motion.
Chair, I hereby make a motion to recommend approval of the proposed architectural design amendments as submitted and shown in the Exhibit A provided by the applicant, consisting of the 3 design types with the layout as illustrated in the map provided. Amen.
Suggested reasons for action.
Oh, thank you. The suggested reasons for the action. Take back that amen. A through E.
I'll second that. Any further discussion or debate? If not, we'll start with you, Commissioner Daly.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Motion passes. Our recommendation will be passed along to the City Council, and now you get to go convince them. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to our next item on the agenda. We're furthering our discussion of the general plan regarding the South Main Street corridor. So we're continuing to draft the South Main Street corridor plan rewrite. We're going to be discussing the various proposed concepts and draft language that was included in the packet and give city staff further direction. So with that introduction, Corey, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Chair Heyman. The 2 documents submitted to you for the South Main Street discussion, the continued discussion. One is the concepts and ideas. It's still an unfinished product, but I did attempt to go back from our last discussion, particularly when we talked about an example of CH uses on the Pages Lane, the north part of Pages Lane, and we wanted to have that removed and kept into the CM. So I can highlight those in for you if you want, but I think you probably have other discussions that you want to pursue before you.
Could you back up for a second on that, though? You
Sure.
said the north end of Pages Lane.
North end of Main Street at
By
Parish.
Lane. Okay, that makes
Sorry.
more sense. Thanks.
Sorry, yeah. Getting my mental map a little messed up now. So I've tried to incorporate some of those early concepts and changes. I've added a few more, trying to show you my thought pattern. Again, I want this to be open to the commission because this is your community. I could certainly just draft up a generic place in my mind and give it to you, and you can react to it. But I think you also have, as citizen planners, an opportunity to be creative in your thought patterns and suggest ideas. And we can certainly get to that, roll up our sleeves and talk about some of those concepts if you want to. But included as part of a discussion that happened with the City Council and at the request of Chair Heyman was the discussion of the crime study that the city had done a few years back and an analysis. So I did find that document and printed it for you. So I think there's some interesting data in that survey that we can talk about. But I think the concept behind adding the crime statistics that were done in 2017 is still centered around the discussion, if we introduce residential, what is it, what's its type, how does it affect the community? And Chair Heyman indicated that having some of that data and that perspective would be good for the commission to look at as you start thinking about which direction you want to go. So Chair Heyman, I'm going to turn the crime stuff over to you, and I can highlight what I found interesting, but let you also.
Thank you very much, Corey. There was a comment made at our last meeting along the lines of that the police department feels a significant impact and spends a greater amount of time in multifamily housing than in single-family housing. And I just wanted to see the underlying data to see if that's true, because I think that we do need to look at that as we're developing Main Street. Based on my review of the demographics and the information that you pulled together, I didn't see that that was necessarily supported, but I think that it's really good for us to have the data as we're examining this issue, because I don't want to rely on anecdotal information, particularly if we have the underlying statistics that we can actually rely on. So I appreciate you for going back and pulling that information from me. I don't know that that was a primary focus, so I know it was a huge part of the packet, and I didn't mean for that to sort of take over what we were.
Huge part of the packet.
It was huge, right? It was. I think it was a PowerPoint presentation. So I didn't want that to waylay it. I just asked Corey if he could find that and include it as part of our discussion, but I don't want necessarily to focus on that aspect of it. So I guess one of the things I want to just sort of brainstorm with you all. So Corey has, I think, given us a really good skeleton and has started to flesh out some of the parts of this. I'm wondering what is going to be the most economic way for us to move forward with this discussion and now start engaging in strategy, right? And actually putting that strategy down on paper. Does it make sense for us to kind of go through piece by piece, take each of the 5 themes and sort of walk through each one, take 1 or 2 this week, take 1 or 2 next week? I'm open to feedback.
I've liked the themes that Corey gave us, but I don't know if there's like one right way of doing it, but I appreciated that perspective, and I think it helped me sort of bite it, by a section. Here's this, that. So.
I think it'd be good to start with, by themes, are you talking about the goals? There's goals 1 through 5.
The 5 vision
visions.
right there.
Oh.
Or, even if we did it in the 3 different areas and then went through each area and went through each theme per area.
One of the things that I think we do need to decide, sort of stepping back big picture before jumping into the 5 areas or the 3 areas, is where do we see this street going kind of globally? Do we want to keep it commercial? Do we want to allow the introduction of residential, and if so, what types?
Okay, so that's maybe why I was confused by that then, is because the goals, there's the 5 goals in here that I think outline a good way to do it, which is, goal number 1, maintain the local and historic character of Main Street. Goal number 2,
Okay.
the commercial uses of Main Street. Goal number 3 is the residential. 4 is development design, and 5 is the corridor street space expectation. I think if we were to break it down that way, those are the small pieces those are the decisions that we need to make, like residential, yes or no, and how.
Yes.
Commercial, yes or no, and how. Design, yes or no, and how, and whatever.
I think that we're on the same page. We were looking at it in terms of vision. He was looking at it in terms of goals. We're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so, okay, we're on the same page. Life is good. So I think I am going to suggest that we jump to the residential reintroduction opportunities first, because I do think that that is going to be a big think that will shape some of our decisions on these other goals or visions.
So I was interested to read the minutes from last meeting because I obviously couldn't attend, and I was surprised to find that some of the council members who previously supported residential sort of took a step back and were like, well, I'm not sure if actually residential is exactly what I want.
At the city council meeting.
At your meeting, yeah, at our last meeting, while others who were sort of kind of opposed to any kind of to anything but single-family residential were then now exploring ADUs, exploring mixed-use residential, adding that in that way. And so how did you feel? I mean, I read through the minutes, but I'd love to hear your take on, like, how do you feel is the residential reintroduction strategy that you could get behind or that you think could be supported by the city council based on that discussion?
Before I jump in, anyone else want to weigh in?
Yeah, I feel absolutely, anyone who disagrees obviously doesn't understand it as well as I do. That the city council would get behind an ADU type thing, limited to densities associated with like a per building thing, so it doesn't ever grow too big.
Okay.
And I don't think that standalone residential is what they're looking for, and I don't think you get the support at the city council level for standalone residential, like horizontal mixed use where you have your storefront. You kind of got to be attached to the building, and I think, you know, I don't know if density is the right word, but it probably can't get any higher than 4 units an acre, but it'll probably be governed by, a successful proposal would be governed by a different mechanism, I think, like number per building, like 2 dwelling units per building with height limitations or something like that. That's my sense.
Well, so I was thinking about that actually as well, and I guess maybe this is where I'd look to somebody like Logan for some input on that, is if you were to do those limitations that we talked about, the percentages and whatever else, and if it did end up being roughly 4 units per acre, which it sounds like that's what the appetite is of certain members of the city council, is that economically viable? Is that feasible for a development?
No, I don't think so. I think if you looked at it and you said, I have to be 60% commercial and 40% residential, and as a developer, if you're looking at that and saying, how do I fill the 60% in a long-term lease and then put the residential up top, I just think you don't go there. I think it opens up the door for the vision that the city council wanted, which was owners doing that. So the point here isn't how can we sell these lots to developers to come and build up these projects we want. It's how can these owners supplement their income with a few residential units.
And to supplement that, I mean, I think that some of the ideas were, because I envision helping transform this street if we allow for multifamily housing along there. The idea is you rip down some of the more outdated buildings and you build up nice multifamily residential along that street. And I did not get the sense that that was what the city council, maybe a couple, but I think that the push was more the idea that we're going to take an existing building and allow them just to tack on, you know, an extra building on the side or on top. And I question how viable that is going to be as a model and whether it's actually going to stimulate any change along Main Street.
So I think that then going back to, and I still struggle a little bit with the whole idea of residential. I kind of still stand by what I had said before, probably a couple meetings ago, which was I think we need to go all in or all out on residential. And my feeling is go out. But I do think that if you were to maybe try, like Logan is mentioning here, it would be kind of like, since Main Street is mostly owned by local residents or Davis County residents or whatever else, they're going to have their business there, and then they're going to throw on some additional units or whatever. And chances are they're going to be renting it out to people they know, their kids, their friends, whatever, you know. And maybe that's an opportunity for people who grow up in Centerville to stay in Centerville. They're living here for a while or something like that. But I mean, it's an intriguing idea, but I'm not convinced yet. I still lean more toward let's forget residential, and just go all in on commercial.
I am leaning towards you, and look, if it were me in my world, I would allow the multifamily housing along that side of the street, particularly the west side, where I think that there already has been introduced multifamily housing. So you're not going to have the single-family homes abutting up next to multifamily housing. I think that would be a real driver for change along that Main Street that might create synergy and create new opportunities on the east side of the road for some of that more commercial development, but absent being able to actually go all in and do a nice multifamily housing block, I really question whether if we say, yeah, you can build another floor on top of your existing building and rent it out, whether that's really going to stimulate change. So given the temperature of the city council, I think that the more viable option to stimulate change would be to go all commercial. But I think if we're going to do that, I think we really do have to open up uses. I mean, really consider allowing more businesses to come in. And I'm not saying businesses that are not consistent with the feel and the area that we want there, but I think that we have put up to the city council a number of uses that would be entirely consistent with that community feel that might stimulate that type of a development. But so I think right now I'm kind of leaning towards just all commercial.
Well, so that being said, I'm going to pull a Logan real quick in switch directions.
What?
But if we were to throw it out there and include this residential stuff that we've talked about, include it in there saying, look, we don't think it's really going to be a focus. We don't think it's really going to work very well, but here it is if somebody wants to do it. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to that if somebody really wanted to try it, but I just don't think it's going to be a big option. You know what I mean?
Here's the thing that I keep thinking about with residential is I was pretty surprised to hear that the city council was like, residential, yeah, and then mixed use, and yeah, maybe, ADUs, because there has been some strong resistance to that historically from them and from a base of people in Centerville. So I was pretty surprised to hear that from them. And I think if we move in that direction, they may sort of regret that. They may sort of go, wait. The only way to make this viable is if there's more, and then we don't want this and its density and all these different things. So I think they may actually be more uncomfortable with it than what they think they're comfortable with. And if we sort of remove that as this hot point, as this cause for alarm for them and for a group of people, and instead focus on, listen, we are going all in, like you said. We're trying to go all in with commercial. We're trying to open this up. We're trying to allow existing business owners to have flexibility. Let's focus on stimulating that. And then we can always add in residential if that's not happening. But at this point, we can remove that sort of hot topic, remove that from the discussion and let people sort of just breathe a little bit and move forward with commercial.
One of the things that I didn't see in the minutes, but I recall somebody saying, I don't remember who, was the idea that affordable housing does better when it is spread out through the city rather than being concentrated in one area. And
Is that what you said?
Robin's quoting me.
what's that? But if our city council is open to that, I do think that we as a city, I've gotten up on my soapbox, so I'm not going to get up on my soapbox again, but I do think that we need to think about affordable housing issues. We are a fantastic community, and I think that people would love to live here and raise their families here. So I want to make sure that we as a city are thinking about that.
Which would totally make sense if we added a residential component here, because this would be a nice area to have that affordable housing.
But that being said, if our city council is starting to have some openness to allowing maybe some density in some other areas in the city to allow it to spread out that way, then maybe we can focus on just this section being commercial. If we as a city are willing to say, look, we're gonna try to spread out some of the affordable housing throughout the city because we think that that's a better model. It allows people to be more integrated, feel more part of the community, the concern about crime, although it seems like from the crime statistics, single family houses are just as likely to cause issues. But then I think that maybe we can go ahead and look at focusing on just commercial. Although, that being said, Kevin, I don't know that I'm intrigued by your idea about the idea of throwing in residential, and I'm almost thinking about throwing it in, but in a segregated way, so that if they're looking at it and they don't like that, they can easily just excise that piece. So it's sort of a writer, right? Like, here's our vision. here's our vision, and oh, there's this residential component, give it some thought, and if they include it, great, and if they don't, it's easily removable.
Yeah, literally with the motion,
Yeah.
it just removes section E.
And reorder the goals so that it becomes goal 5, and you can just omit goal
And
5.
they can just
and-
take that one out.
Yeah.
Because I do think that it would be a way to stimulate Main Street. There is no question.
Right.
But
If it's done right.
if it's done correctly, but it will impact our tax base. I mean, we've talked about this before. We as a city are receiving tax benefit from having commercial along that street. You're not going to get the same benefit out of residential. Now, maybe I'm talking myself out of residential.
I say, I would think it might be nice for us to just move forward and we can address residential after we've come up with a strong plan, commercial. And if we feel like, oh, this easily kind of fits in there, then we can add that, like you said, as that
Yeah.
last bit.
I like that approach. I mean, I think what I would like to see there, and it would be commercial. You know, some type of soft commercial like we've talked in the past, and is that a viable option? Does it make sense for those property owners or developers to have it be commercial? I don't know. If we open up the options, you know, kind of say, hey, you were limited to this, now you have all of these other options, maybe that would promote that growth and that development. And 'cause I think that is generally what people are leaning towards, is more commercial, and, you know, come up with something strong there, and then have that option for, we later come up with for a residential piece to be put onto that opens up that flexibility as well. And
I do think that this term that gets thrown around, has been thrown around a lot, soft commercial, that's an ambiguous term. I'm not really a fan of it. I will, personally, I would like to just go back to say, the list that we submitted to the city council late last year, that's the list. That's what I would support, and I think that's what makes sense. And then we can maybe stop using this ambiguous term, soft commercial. Let's talk about our list that
The
we submitted.
list.
Do you notice
Well,
Corey?
Thomas isn't familiar with our list, but
Yeah.
I don't have the list, so.
You notice
I'm
Corey-
sure we can dig it up for you.
Corey named it not soft commercial. He called it domestic. What did he say? Domestic natured commercial or something in there, which is equally ambiguous.
Maybe a better term is harmonious commercial,
Oh, there you
right?
go.
Whatever,
Go.
whatever the thing,
boy.
whatever the commercial is that fits within that character, which I think all of the recommendations that we send up are harmonious. But
Again, that's why we put in almost all of them in as conditional uses, so that we could kind of tailor that harmoniousness of the use, right? Anyway,
I need to come up with a better term for that. So I feel like then we're kind of on the same page. Corey, you're missing great discussion, my friend, because I think that we are, sorry, I don't mean to embarrass
him
you.
out.
I think that we lean towards going forward with focusing on the commercial piece first.
yep.
And we can tack on the residential at the end, but I think the consensus, Corey, is that we are going to move forward with commercial. And Kevin, I think that we do send back up our list of uses, back up in connection with this, and call it whatever. We have to come up with a better name than harmonious uses, but I mean, harmonious commercial. We'll come up with some better term, but I like that approach.
Yeah. Me too.
So that really, so the idea, Corey, would be to move the residential component to the last goal, with the idea that we're gonna focus really on the commercial aspect and building out the commercial plan. And then we'll kind of consider tacking on at the end this residential idea. With the expectation that the city council, if they are open to considering the residential component, I think it does need to be more than just the throw along a lean-to on the back of your property and call it an ADU. I think it needs to be some meaningful multifamily housing option. I would not be in favor of doing single-family housing along that street. I don't think that it's feasible. But then if we include that as the last piece, if the city council really reacts strongly to it and says, nope, we don't want to do it, they could just excise that piece and keep the other commercial component.
So this goal 3 becomes goal 5.
Yeah.
Right, and
Well, and the
I'll
other
have to reformat so that we can do a plug and play to the other elements if residential is chosen.
Right.
And I can just break it out where you would plug that in if it's an option that's
The
included.
other thing that this does too is it helps us talk about the uses in a way that doesn't inhibit them from a lot of the issues that have happened that the city council believes are important issues, where you have a residential next to a potential, problematic commercial. And so if we're taking that out and focusing on the commercial, this is alleviating that potential conflict that the city council has seen between some of the commercial uses and the existing residential that's there, right?
The other thing that it does is it helps revitalize what's there right now. I mean, really, it is a commercial corridor in that limited area. So we're not really making any drastic changes to the nature of that. In fact, I mean, the argument is that we're preserving the existing nature of the Main Street corridor. Yeah, and stimulating development and
Well, and I
synergy
think it's
along there.
important too, as we discuss this, I think everyone understands that while it is a commercial corridor, it is not, we are not trying to make it look like a big box commercial corridor. We're not trying to make it look like anything else. The whole quote about strategy, making choices, and deliberately choosing to be different, we can apply that in this specific area. We can choose to have our Main Street different than any other place, and that's a strategy that we want to maintain in order to keep that nature of our Main Street, but also stimulate that, so it doesn't have to look like a big box area.
Well, and I am not in favor of having it look necessarily even like Parish Lane. And I think that the
No.
Parish Lane design standards they're really nice. It's created a very cohesive look along Parish Lane. But when I envision, okay, so I'm now switching y'all to goal 4, which is the design element of this. I don't even know how to describe it, but when Corey, so on page, I don't know what page this is, under 4A3 of the goals, where he says, require the use of building materials and architectural elements in the district that are compatible and complementary to ... right? For me, I like the idea of trying to keep it a historic feel, not in a bountiful Main Street kind of historic feel, not in that sort of, quaint Main Street feel, but more of a throwback nod to some of the historic elements of it. And I don't.
So you're going back against your Disneyland Main Street
Well,
plan.
give it sort of, but not. I mean, like the
You were a
essence
big
of that, but
proponent of
opening it up a little bit. So creating some palette that's cohesive in terms of color and materials and style, but that's not modern, that's not contemporary, that's not stucco, that has a little bit more of a feel to match the homes in the historic district right behind that street.
That's a great
right?
idea.
Like it needs to kind of channel some of the elements that you see in those historic homes. And I think that would be a really great way of creating character and giving some identity to our Main Street that is not Parish Lane and that's not bountiful.
I think that's I love the idea of thinking about our historic district, because that part of it is our historic district. I think people in Centerville would appreciate that as well. I think they would appreciate that we are looking to the historic district, looking to what's happening in that area and taking a nod, nodding to that.
Here's just a random thought, since we're all in brainstorming mode. What if we were to invite the Historic Planning Commission? Isn't there a commission that does
Landmarks
the landmarks? Thank you. I was totally blanking on. What if we were to invite the Landmarks Commission here and say, hey, this is something that we're thinking about. If we said we want Main Street to have this sort of historic feel, what type of elements should we be looking at? What types of things should we be considering
That'd be
including? I mean, who's going to know better about
Than them.
certain elements than them?
Well, I can tell you the Landmarks Commission does have a data set. It's part of the incentives for the home construction. So they can share with you, probably in a work session, that data set and discuss the elements of what constitutes the historic district. And then, obviously, a home's going to look different than a commercial property.
Sure,
But But you
Like
can
a
certainly,
nods.
you can come to the understanding of what that district is made up of, what's its predominant style, and then from there start gleaning out what could be applied to the streetscape or the buildings fronting Main Street.
Because I'm not envisioning something that is throwback. I mean, I don't want to drive down the street and think I'm in an 18th century historic
Right,
district.
right.
What I'm envisioning is sort of a nod to the 18th century elements, 19th century elements.
There was nothing here.
That incorporate some of those that kind of give it the feel, but still are obviously modern in construction terms.
I
Yeah,
was
they
picturing
studied-
a saloon and wagon wheels and horse troughs.
Well,
So
I
they
actually,
studied every home in the district and have an entire booklet and data set on what constitutes the district.
Well,
I think that would be
and-
good and helpful to go through a work session on and come to an understanding.
one thing that is great about that sort of brainstorming idea is that, you know, there are, for me, when I think about making this area of Main Street revitalized, I think there are several different ways that you can achieve a nod to an historic area. I don't think that it's cookie cutter. It's not Main Street USA. It's not necessarily specific, really, really stringent standards of, you know, form-based or different things like that. But I think having an actual design where people have that flexibility, but there is sort of this vision, I think is a good way to allow business owners to have flexibility in their redevelopment, but also acknowledge all of these historic natures of our area.
Yeah, and I think that if we look at sort of taking off the handcuffs in terms of moving buildings forward, which I understand from the city council is probably the biggest impediment to people revitalizing their property now, right? They don't want to have to go through all of that. Fine, we take that off. We throw some design standards that are going to create some cohesion. We open up hopefully we convince the city council to open up the table of uses to allow more businesses along there. And I think that you'll see some real development along that Main Street. Not tomorrow, but I think that it will come, and I think that it will come faster than what we have now.
Well, and there's a strong investment in the city for the historic nature of the city. I mean, there's a strong, whether people are invested, you know, day to day in it, or just you come to Centerville and people stay in Centerville and they don't leave Centerville. There's this feeling of this is the way it was and I like it to be this way. And I think this helps address that need, that feeling, that place attachment that people have to Centerville, and yet allows still to manage change.
Yeah, I like this. I like this idea. Corey, what else do you need from us to move forward with putting the strategy to paper? Is there more information that you need from us?
No, I think I could take, you know, there's a couple of things I could understand just for clarity. This skeleton has some general anchor to it. Obviously, it's going to be heavily modified to some degree. The residential element moved to an end in a plug-and-play fashion. I'm hearing single-family is not the priority of the focus of residential reintroduction.
I don't know how y'all feel, but I would not even include it. I just wouldn't. The only way that single family is going to be even feasible along there is if you get a tract of property like the O'Brien property and you put a fence around that Main Street. And I think that changes the character of what we want. There is no way that anyone is going to build a single family home with a driveway facing Main Street. So I think we take it out.
Yeah, and if it's something that is re-enters, we can, you know, the debate up at the residential, if there's something to be done, the council can say, this is what we'd like to be done, and remand an element back, and we could debate it then, too. So we can do that. So I'll do that. The strategy is a work session with the Landmarks Commission.
Yeah, will you check with them and see if they're, I mean, I would love if they could even come to meet with us maybe in advance of our next planning commission meeting. I don't know if that's too soon, but if we could just meet with them an hour before our planning commission session, so maybe do a joint work session that's from 6 to 7. Who's gonna Kevin, you're not going
I'm
to be
out.
here.
Yep.
Next week.
Do you want me to wait? We can wait. I'm trying
You
to
can wait.
honor the city council's wishes to move things forward, but we are also down a planning commissioner at the moment, so maybe if
And a
we-
staff.
Yeah, so let's maybe push it to the next,
Yep,
the
that'd
next
be fine.
one. And that gives you the time to go back in and
Yeah, and I'll
work this.
I'll coordinate, and then I can put back a brief strategy to get through the process
Okay.
for you. No, I think that's good.
I also like goal 5, and I like the street space expectations. I like that wording, Corey.
Yeah.
And I
Trying to-
think that, I think we kind of need to talk about symmetry.
Yeah, I think we have a lot to hammer out in that this is obviously not even the beginning to discuss how we address that element. But I wanted it in there because I think it's still an important component to come up with.
Yeah.
I think let's tackle that one next time, along with the North Parish Lane intersection area. I have not the foggiest what I want there. I mean,
Okay.
not the foggiest.
I know we talked about this last time, but this north side of City Hall, the left turn conflict over there, why?
I hate that.
Is that left turn conflict with the entrance to?
Post office.
Post office?
Mhm.
It just seems so wrong to force people to go all the way around to get to the city hall. That's just me.
Well, the city's, just so you know, I mean, it can change, but the city's master plan for this civic area is the elimination of this road. Entire elimination.
But is that also dependent upon,
Obtaining.
does that include keeping the gas station?
No, that means the road goes, on the master plan, the road would go right through the middle of that gas station.
Yeah, see, that's not gonna happen.
Not
Well, I
anytime
can't
soon.
say for sure, but
Yeah,
going
I'm-
back to this,
It doesn't mean other elements can't be changed,
Kevin,
through
but
time.
you would
but-
say that about Dick's Market too. Think about it.
no,
Like,
but I mean, going back to this this historic
Yeah.
minded nature of the community, that gas station's way more historic than Dick's Market,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so.
All right.
So then we have to have a discussion about the left
Okay,
turn conflict.
let's eat that piece of the elephant on a different day.
Yeah.
I feel like we've
You've got plenty of work.
yeah,
Plenty of-
I think that we've made a significant leap forward. At least now we have a vision that we're moving towards,
Okay.
which makes me excited.
Let's tell the
So-
post office to move their entrance.
Yeah.
So also, Corey, speaking of the post office, what kind of recourse does the city have to tell the post office that they need to maintain or deal with their weed issue? I'm just wondering, is there anything we can do as a city to be like, hey, so
Write a letter to your congressman and.
your weeds are like 2 feet high?
We probably have a lot to say. It's not federally owned property, it's leased to the federal government, so that's what I'm pretty sure. It's a leased facility,
Okay,
so we probably have
we have some
a
say
lot of
there.
influence, yeah.
You might need to pay them a visit, Corey. Just saying.
The foundation has been discussing options for helping that happen.
Oh, good.
Really? Awesome.
That would be fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you guys for your good work and your nice, cooperative, thoughtful thoughts. That was like the least articulate way that I could ever say that. So, no, I like it. So I think that let's plan on this. Next step, let's try to get together with the Landmark Commission and get their thoughts on how we can incorporate some historic elements along designs. And now that we know where we're going, give some consideration to some of these other elements that we still need to address, and we'll hit those at a future meeting. Okay, moving to the next item on our agenda. So we are going to continue discussion of proposed revisions to City Subdivision Ordinance CMC 15. And it feels so weird to do this without Lisa.
It
So-
does feel super weird to me.
You can
I
table
know.
it if you want.
Corey, I think that we're okay moving through, but I am going to turn the time over to you to walk us through these subdivision.
Corey's like, yay!
No, that's fine. I don't, I didn't read through it before the meeting. This is the final plat process, though, so it's a little more in-depth because there's a number of things that take place, not only at your level, but at the at the city council level. So we've gone page by page. I know Lisa highlights some things that she feels you need to know. I'm not sure what she would have wanted to highlight. I can discuss the procedure. We can go by page by page. I'm not sure how you want to broach it.
So from my own perspective, I always find it incredibly helpful when Lisa does go through page by page, but highlight the areas that she wants us to pay particular attention to.
Okay.
And while I am fully capable of reading and digesting this on my own, for me personally, this is just me speaking personally, I think I would have more comfort level if we had Lisa walking us through this one.
I
agree.
move to table this until Lisa is returned.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Further discussion or debate?
No
All
offense,
those in-
Corey.
Yeah, no offense, Corey.
I have some inside information I'll tell you after the meeting. Explain a lot of my positioning.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll table that one until the next meeting. Item number 4 on our agenda. There's a request for the planning commission to delegate final site plan approvals for single family outside of a subdivision to city staff. So I will turn the time back over to you, Corey.
Thank you, Chair Hayman. This is an interesting request to you. It's coming from myself. So I'll be the argument and petitioner. Kind of the background setting. There is a narrow event that's taken place to create the impetus for bringing this to you. We do have somebody with a single-family lot that, and they're in attendance tonight to watch what happens here, good or bad. It's not irrelevant, but we've had some discussion. They're in the Dual Creek area. They've been focused on handling some of the allowances for reduction of building permit in exchange for design. The interesting part has happened is the structure was originally torn down, so now we're beginning with the foundation and moving back up. It kicks it into this category of residential development. Under your ordinance, site plans, you reserve the right for residential development in an unplatted lot. The ordinance has moved a subdivision when somebody builds a house, because all of the public infrastructure has been constructed. It moves the building of the house just into an administrative approval at staff. But you reserve the right for residential development outside of subdivision. My perception historically is that's really intended because there's some areas that have some raw ground. You have multifamily that can be built on them, and you want to make sure that you go through a process that handles that. What has done for the past 15 years that I've been here is that when we have it for single-family homes, it forces it into a process at the Planning Commission. And as you're aware, our process is 2 steps. Conceptual, then you go back to your separate from the meeting. They used to be not so definitively separated, but the Planning Commission back a few years back is uncomfortable trying to say, let's have a public hearing and approve your final site plan at the same time. And said, no, these will be 2 distinct processes at different meetings. And so this puts the single family home into that 2-step process. And you've had discussions in the past. The primary thing that we're looking at for single family homes generally is they usually don't have the easements that are necessary on the lot, particularly the front easement. The side and rear are less of a priority, but the front easement's a priority. And sometimes you have situations where infrastructure's in the street, but it has to be upsized to meet the number of connections that a 3/4 inch meter can't serve, and there's impact fees associated with the upsizing and so forth. So the city wants to reserve its right to upgrade those facilities that serve that home, and that's what that's primarily is designed for. The other one is you have a large lot development and you have parking with multifamily, the design issues that we talked about, landscaping and so forth. So it's been expressed in the past that this, really, Corey, you're bringing these single family homes to us, can't you do most of this work? And the answer is yes, we can, but we don't have a process.
Yeah.
So in a partial delay of this situation, not knowing to go through the site plan process and to move this along, I decided to chance and capitalize on this unused portion of the zoning ordinance until we can figure out what we really want to do with single-family homes. The unused portion is called routine and uncontested matters. Planning Commission can delegate the zoning administrator to handle those routine and uncontested matters. And obviously, if a decision is made at that level, it comes back up to the Planning Commission for resolution. And then if that doesn't resolve it, it's to the typical appeal process to the Board of Adjustment. So that's that due process. I was hoping originally when we began to figure out speeding up the time for the individual at hand is to just move the whole process to the zoning administrator, because typically we're just looking at easements that's run through the city engineer, the water lines run through the department. Lisa's looking at the easements to make sure they're described and matched what Kevin has approved, and then it all gets recorded. So it's 95 to 98% handled at a staff level. There's a hiccup though. In the routine uncontested matters, it references back to that if a public hearing is required, then the staff still has to conduct the public hearing. So then there's this awkward place. Does staff do the public hearing during business hours? Does staff do the public hearing during the evening hours? It's not really changing anything with the conceptual, because the conceptual is the public hearing. Final, we're fine on because there's no hearing. But conceptual, there's a mandatory hearing. And so I wrote this as a split. If it's a single family, would you maintain the conceptual review at your level? Because we have to, until we change the ordinance, we have to conduct the hearing. Now, we can talk about amending that at another time if you want to, but right now we're stuck with the public hearing for conceptual on a single family. And then delegate the final, the second step. You'll see it. You'll know the parameters. Staff will identify the parameters for that particular one. You'll have the hearing. You'll make a decision to say, yeah, we think it's reasonable to move forward, and you delegate that second step to the zoning administrator for now. And so that's the request to you is this individual. It saves them a little bit of time. And again, we shouldn't make decisions based on one scenario, but this is not the first time we've had issues with single-family homes. So until we change the process for the hearing and decide what we're really doing with single-family homes, which I think we can improve and streamline, for now the streamline is this: commission sees conceptual, staff implements it at final, if you're okay with it. But you get to decide whether you want to delegate that to myself.
Thank you, Corey. Any questions for staff? I appreciate you for taking the incentive to do this, because we have raised this issue several times, not in connection with this particular issue. And it's something that I've been in favor of doing, because as the video that we saw last week indicated to us as planning commissioners, the bulk of our time should be spent on planning. So I appreciate you for taking initiative, Corey. Any other questions?
No,
Since you
no
are
hearing,
the
you could just
applicant
delegate it.
and
So basically in the motion, when I was reading it, it was saying the final site plan delegated to zoning. And that's the one that you think is going to be the best, not the initial or
The initial
preliminary.
conceptual requires the hearing.
Okay,
so we have to do it that way for now.
that's right. Okay,
If I could get us out of the hearing, but that's a code amendment.
yeah.
So Corey, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Because I'd
I
almost
was gonna say,
prefer, I'd almost
eventually
prefer
we probably
that.
should just
Yeah.
change it so it's delegated to in its entirety and not have a hearing on a single family. I'm still a little perplexed on a single family lot. If we're not going to do a single family home, what are we going to do with that lot?
Right.
So, I think it's the least risk to move to an administrative level, at least to a staff administrative level.
So Corey, from a procedural perspective here, or standpoint here, we have two motions that we're kind of considering. The first motion, we can take care of that on our own. The second motion isn't necessarily to approve a zoning text amendment, but is to say,
Delegate. your powers to meet.
But a zoning text amendment, we'd still have to approve a zoning text amendment, and then that's got to go to the city council.
Yeah.
Not on this item. If we want to remove the public hearing, then we have to do a zone text amendment. I'm not proposing a text amendment right now. I'm just asking for you to delegate final site plan powers to myself because you define it as a routine and uncontested
Okay, wait.
So this
then-
is purely something that is within our authority now, so we have the authority to delegate it without going to the city council.
So that's proposed motion number one. And then
Yes.
proposed motion number two, though, says, hey, come back to us with a zoning text amendment eliminating the public
Public
hearing.
hearing.
Yep.
Right.
Because to initiate a text is council, staff, or a petition. Or not staff, council, commission, or a petition. So I cannot officially
Initiate that.
initiate it.
Yeah, we have to do that.
Yeah.
You have to do it. Sorry, I didn't
I
realize you're on the
appreciate that.
second
I
motion.
appreciate that
Oh, yeah.
clarification, though, because I was a little confused in
Yeah.
the packet as well.
Okay.
Okay. This is not scheduled for a public hearing, so any further discussion or debate? I always say discussion or debate. Really, it's sort of duplicative, but you get the gist. The chair will entertain a motion.
I hereby make a motion for the planning commission to establish the following process for approval of single-family development on an unplanned lot. Any residential single-family home shall be required to obtain a conceptual site plan acceptance from the city's planning commission in order to conduct necessary public hearing. And upon conceptual site plan acceptance, the final site plan is hereby delegated to the city zoning administrator as outlined as A, B, and C in the staff report.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion or debate? If not, we'll start with you, Commissioner Wright.
Aye.
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 Okay, and we have one more motion.
Can we just change A to say cities?
Yeah.
I was gonna
Oh,
like make that
Cody's.
change, and I was like,
Yeah, that was just a typo.
just the typo on A
City's zoning
instead of
code.
Cody's.
It's actually Cody's.
Cody's.
Yeah.
Cody's zoning code.
Yes.
All right, and we have one more proposed motion if anyone wants to make it.
You don't have to. Just
Bueller.
Because you have to receive the actual,
Yeah,
I'm in favor of it.
okay.
Yeah, I hereby make
Myself.
the motion, if that's okay, Chair.
Sure.
Is that a good time for that? For the planning commission to propose a zoning text amendment to the city's zoning ordinance for approval of single-family development on an unplatted lot to consider the following, the 3 bullet points in the staff report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion or debate? If not, I will take a roll call vote, starting with you, Commissioner Daly.
Aye.
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 Great.
Good
Thank
luck.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
have fun with that, Corey. No, I really, I mean, I'm being flippant, but I really do appreciate you for taking the initiative to do that. I think that it's something that has been long overdue, and I'm glad that you did it. Okay, moving up to item number 5, the Community Development Director's report.
We have a meeting for you, and we just outlined potential projects. I think the Jensen family subdivision is still incomplete, but
Where is that one located?
that is up the connection of what everybody thinks is the missing road off of Rolling Hills.
Okay.
So South Main Street will continue, but you'll move it to the following meeting. Fisher Small Subdivision, it's a lot split, and
Where's that?
that is just north of Parish on Main Street,
Okay.
on the east side of the road. And then we have our subject matter about unplatted lot, single family, scheduled for your conceptual review.
Okay.
What about the Matthew Trump home? Where's that one?
That is in the Dual Creek area, the one we talked about tonight.
On 4 South?
I'm not sure of the address. Matt, what's-
Okay.
It's right behind my house, actually. I've been wondering what the heck was going on with that, so I'll be glad to know. All right. Thank you very much, Corey. It looks like we don't have anything to note for the city council report. So the last item on our agenda is to review and approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes for April 24th. So we will do this in typical fashion, going page by page. Let me know if you have any comments, starting with page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. The chair will entertain a motion.
I move to accept the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting on Wednesday, April 24th, 2019.
I second that with the note that it was unamended.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
The unamended
The
minutes.
unamended minutes.
Nice.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I will, unless there's anything else that anyone wants to raise, I will move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thanks, everyone.